Hey guys, what's up? This is James here from Serial Gaming and Tech. Yes, I said Serial Gaming and Tech. I changed the video because I thought Serial 5 TV was a little unfitting. I think Serial Gaming and Tech is a little better because I will definitely be doing some tech reviews as well as some game reviews and gameplay videos. I think that is much more suiting to the channel. That said, I hope you all like the content to come, and let's get started. So this video today is going to be the GTX 1080 quote-unquote review. I don't have too many games to review but I wanted to go over a quick specs list and other stuff like that. So starting out, GTX 1080 came out on, I believe, June 5th of 2016. It was the first card of NVIDIA's Pascal lineup to come out. Which basically featured not necessarily more GPU cores, but much higher clock speeds to give it much better effective GPU performance. So the GTX 1080 has 2,560 CUDA cores, which is actually about 300 less than the 980 Ti. But the base clock is 1,607 megahertz, and the boost clock is 1,733 megahertz. My specific GTX 1080 is a reference card, and it boosts up to 1,850 megahertz. That is a great boost clock. Over 100 megahertz more than the advertised boost clock. So I think I did get a pretty decent card. It does overclock well, but we'll get more into overclocking later. So the memory speed is 10 gigabits per second, or about 1.25 gigabytes per second. So very good, and that is on 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X, which is basically the same as GDDR5, but I want to say about 30% faster. Not quite as good as HBM or high bandwidth memory, but still definitely an upgrade from GDDR5 on the 1070 and last generation Maxwell cards, the 900 series. 256-bit memory interface, 320 gigabytes per second bandwidth. It does support VR. One of the cool features about Pascal is that it features something called NVIDIA Ansel. Now this is a software, I guess you could say, in the new series of NVIDIA cards, and it allows you to take a screenshot in game, and you can magnify, I think, up to 8 times the resolution, or something crazy stupid like that. So you could take, like, say there's a book in a window that's like 5 pixels wide on your screen. You could zoom in and make that, you could take a screenshot of that and zoom in and make that like the size of half of your screen because of this new feature, which I think is really cool. Like, you could read the words on the page. It also features a video game stream, which isn't anything new. That just basically is like a shadow play that will stream to any kind of streaming website. It also features support for DirectX 12 and Vulkan. It has 4 display outputs, the first being a DVI-D dual link, which is what I actually use to drive my 1080p 144Hz monitor. It also has an HDMI 2.0B, which features a max resolution of 8K at, I believe, 30 Hz. And 3 DisplayPort 1.4 inputs, which features 8K at 60 Hz. Even though there's no 8K TVs out, I guess that's okay. Because it's a Founders Edition, the card is definitely on the shorter end. I know there are aftermarket cards that can be much longer, but I still think the card overall is a pretty long card. So you definitely want to make sure you have enough room in your case before you put one of these in. The card is a single 8-pin connector, which definitely speaks to its much better power efficiency, I guess you could say, which is another thing that NVIDIA really pushed with the Pascal architecture, is their efficiency and their lower watt usage. So we started out with some 3D Mark benchmarking. I used Firestrike Extreme, and TimeSpy. So the results of Firestrike, I got an overall score of 18,523 with a graphics score of 22,380. So that's 108 FPS on test 1 and 88 FPS on test 2. Test 2, across all of the benchmarks that they have, has a lot more tessellation and smoke effects. So that's where you see the lower FPS from, because it puts a much heavier load on the GPU. So comparing the results online, you can see that this is better, obviously, than 96% of all results, which I think is a pretty dang good score. It also ranks better than 3D Mark's 4K gaming PC, which is two 980s in SLI. So seeing that a 1080 can beat two 980s in a benchmark that scales, in my opinion, very well with SLI, I would say that's quite a feat for NVIDIA to do, to beat out such high of a card in SLI in one generation. So moving on to Firestrike Extreme. This is the same test that Firestrike is, except it is rendered in 1440p. So the overall score I got was 9,858 with a graphics score of 10,524. That's 55 FPS in test 1 and 39 on test 2. So comparing this result online, you can see the 1080 starts to fall off a little bit, with it being better than 86% of all results, but I still think that is a very great number for a single card to get in 1440p gaming. So obviously it falls behind the 4K gaming PC, which is two 980s in SLI, but I kind of expected this because at the end of the day, SLI 980s are still a powerhouse, and even just a single 980 is meant for 1440p gaming. So moving on to 3D Mark TimeSpy, this is 3D Mark's DirectX 12 benchmark. I got an overall score of 7,058 with a graphics score of 7,126. That is 46 FPS on test 1 and 41 FPS on test 2. I find that TimeSpy is a much more demanding benchmark than Firestrike is, and I'm not sure if it's rendered in 1080p or 1440p. It would make sense if it was rendered in 1440p, but I can't tell you for sure. So comparing this result online reveals that it actually stays ahead of the 4K gaming PC. It makes me think that it's rendered in 1080p, because I would think that the SLI cards would definitely push ahead in the higher resolutions. So to circle back around with the overclocking I talked about earlier, I had a little trouble overclocking my GPU. Granted, that being said, I'm not the best GPU overclocker. So what had happened was I use MSAA Afterburner, which is great. It works on any NVIDIA card and most AMD cards that I know of. Another great one is EVGA Precision, which works on NVIDIA cards only. But anyways, I had 212 megahertz on the core, which put me at 2050 megahertz, completely flat, 100% stable, and 300 megahertz on the memory, which is 600 effective, and guarantee that I could have gotten maybe 100 or 200 more out of the memory. And this is all stressed using Unigine Heaven, which is a great benchmark. They also make Valley, which is another great one. But anyways, the card tested fine at 2050 megahertz, had no problems at all. Very rare stutter, not much that I really noticed. Well, obviously when it stuttered I would notice it, but it wasn't not very often at all. So when I went in to do some benchmarking on 3D Mark, obviously I started with it at stock speeds, and then I applied my overclock and tried to do some overclocking with that, and it would not work. I don't know why, I don't know what it was, but I tried it on the boost that I had it on, or sorry, the overclock that I had it on, and it would boot up and then immediately crash. So I figured that something in the overclock was wrong. So I backed it down to 200 megahertz even, and it still would not work. So I tried backing it down a little more, I think to 190, and it would get through the first two phases, and then when it went to the combined phase, it failed again. So I was really confused, and I just did not know what to do, so I just left overclocked benchmarks out of the picture, just because I really don't know a whole lot about it. So sorry guys, but that's how it worked. So last but not least guys, here's some quick pictures of the card and it in my system. I went with a little bit of an October theme with the orange lighting and the pumpkin. Yes, that's a real pumpkin. But I hope you enjoyed the video guys. If you did, hit that like button and get subscribed. I'm going to be trying to stay on a little more of a regular schedule, about one video a week to every 10 days. And obviously streaming will come first, which by the way, you can find a link to my stream in the video description below. Head over there, drop me a follow there as well. And take it easy guys, I'll see you next time.